And good evening, everybody. Welcome to Fairway to Heaven right here on DSM Media Live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow. You know the drill. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. Help build that algorithm of whatever it is. I don't know how it works, but I know if you like it, I know if you hit subscribe, and I know if you drop a comment, helps build that algorithm up a little bit more. That is not Jason Sullivan sitting next to me. I am Phil Stuff, your host. Jason Sullivan's got a little bit of a power outage issue up there in Detroit. He is sweating in his house, he told me, really badly right now. No power in the middle of a heat wave is not a pleasant thing to deal with. So I got on my phone. I messaged my man Ricky here. He's joined us a few times on the show at Fantasy Talk Show. He's like, absolutely, let me jump on to talk the BMW Championship. Good evening, Ricky, and welcome, and thanks for jumping on short notice tonight.
Absolutely, man. I'm always down to talk some golf with you, and I'm very excited for this week. Willie Z was a big community win last week, so let's keep it going. Let's keep it firing. Let's give these people what they want to hear, which is outrights and dubs.
No, it was not a community win. I did not have an outright on Willie Z last week, okay? And y'all bet him like 37 weeks in a row. So all these people talking about how excited they are that the community win on Willie Zalatoris, you bet him 37 times. You hit once. I don't think you broke even on Will Zalatoris outright yet, okay? So I don't want to hear this. Everybody's happy. Was it 2 weeks in a row that a community win happened? I did not have either of those two outrights. So, no, I don't want to hear that positivity on that.
Well, we better turn the positives on because we got to get a new streak going for you then this week. Let's get it going, man.
Absolutely. I think I've burned all my good luck. 6 outrights this year is way more than a guy with my knowledge should hit. So, I don't know. I may have run out of luck on hitting the outright, which is, I don't know about you. You do a lot of other sports as well. Do you agree with me? Hitting an outright in golf before the tournament starts, it's got to be one of the hardest things to do, betting-wise, there is out there.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, there's so many golfers in the field. There's so many things that can go wrong or right, no matter how, well a guy sets up for a course. I mean, prime example, Rory McIlroy last week, everyone was like, oh my God, he's perfect setup. He misses the cut. That's golf for you, and Scotty Scheffler misses the cut as well. So number 1 and number 2, top price guys in the field both missed the cut. You can't make that stuff up.
No, you can't. And Will Zalatoris, it was a great win. If you do not have any, if you're not human, if you did not feel that emotion from him when he shot it, what are they going to talk about now and all that, him hitting that putt. I mean, I felt it. I'm sure every other golf fan out there felt it. That's what we live for. Even if you don't have them in an outright, I had them in some lineups and I cashed in a lot of them last week, but you got to love that emotion that he showed and the weight that's got to be lifted off his chest. I mean, before we bounce into each name specifically, I mean, you got to love it, but how do you feel about a guy like Will Zalatoris finally getting that monkey off his chest? And then there's no turnaround time. It's get right on a plane, get right to Wilmington, Delaware, and continue this FedEx Cup playoff chase. There's no downtime or enjoyment time for a guy like Willie Zalatoris this week.
No, definitely not. I mean, he wants to get in the best position he possibly can for the Tour Championship. As we know, it's that staggered start. So the higher he can climb in the points, the better off he'll be for that tournament and raising the big trophy at the end of the year. So as awesome as it was for him, he's going to jump right back in. He had to play a little bit more golf than everyone because he had to play the playoff, but he's got to jump right back in and get after it again this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in Wilmington, Delaware. First time ever a PGA Tour event has been hosted in the first state, Delaware. It's actually Wilmington Country Club right down the street from my pizza shop, about 15, 20 minutes away. We pass it all the time when we go to the restaurant supply store that's in Wilmington, Delaware. It's a beautiful looking course from the road. I've never played it. It's private, and people like me don't get to play golf courses like Wilmington Country Club. But it looks beautiful from the road. It looks great, and I'm sure they've really done a great job getting it set. I know parking's going to be tight. They've got places within 15, 20 minutes away from the course set up for parking with shuttles and stuff like that. I thought about just using my pizza shop parking lot, just shuttling people there and start charging $20. Why not? But it's a 7,500 plus yard par 71. Obviously, there's very little information that we know about this course. All we really could do is look at the pictures, looking at the scorecard, and some basic little footage that we've seen from yesterday and today's practice rounds. So how when you're looking at something like this, of course, if there's just so little information, how do you start thinking about how to build a model, how to build a lineup? How do you feel about it, Adam? I am trying to go. I'm hoping to get tickets to go on Sunday. Just the shop, Adam. You come in the shop all the time. Staffing's tight. If I can get off on Sunday, Adam, I will be heading down there. But it's still up in the air at this point. Um, how do you build? How do you set this up?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to start by looking at the obvious things, right? I mean, it's, I believe, the second longest course on the PGA Tour schedule this year, and it's the first time they've ever played. So, in terms of experience on the course, nobody has it, right? So Cam Young is just as experienced as Rory McIlroy on this course. They haven't played it in a competitive event, so you got to look at the obvious things. It's a long course. Driving distance is going to be important. The greens are super big this week, so approach is going to be really good. If you can get it on the green, you can putt it down. Obviously, that's going to be important. We have heard a lot of reports saying that the rough is really long. They haven't said how penal it really is, or at least I haven't seen anything.
Well, I'm gonna give you that's a great segue here. Give me a second. Keep talking. I'm gonna get you firsthand footage of what the rough looks like here in a second.
Yeah, so last week it was very penal rough, but it was only 2.5 inches. This week they've got 4 inches of rough, so that's a 1.5 inch difference, obviously. So it's a lot longer. I guess we'll see the footage on how penal it's going to be. So trying to stay in the fairway, but also making sure. Yeah, that's rough stuff, dude.
That's my man Chris Ebom. He's up there. He was at the practice round today, and he was taking some footage of the rough and dropping some golf balls. He's got his cast on his leg there too. Maybe Tony Finau signed that for him. I'm not sure, but that was the first drop in the rough right there, and then he does it again here on a second. Gives it a second drop, and just look at how that second ball. Look at it. Look at that. Oh, yeah, the course hasn't been trampled on yet, but that's some thick looking rough right there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting now because obviously, it's going to be important to try and not get a horrible lie like we saw in that last drop there because, these guys that aren't the strongest, like unless you're Bryson DeChambeau at winged foot, you're not going to be able to get it to the green out of that rough. So, they're going to be taking a lot of layups and a lot of shots from like 145, 105, trying to get it close in, and that's going to be tough in that rough.
Yeah, absolutely. They also have some of the biggest greens. I don't think it's the biggest, but some of the biggest greens on tour. They're averaging 8,100 yard greens. I hate putting statistics. Like I really do. I kind of putting's so weird to me, and the different surfaces and all. I very rarely tend to worry about putting when I'm, building models and looking at sets. I keep them off to the side and sometimes use them as like my final. Like, all right, if I'm really stuck between two guys, who's the better putter? Maybe I'll go with it. But with those size greens, you kind of really do have to focus on putting a little bit this week, and not just putting, 3-putt avoidance as well, because you need guys that are going to be able to lag the ball up there and save par. This course is being set up. They don't want a 20, 25 under event or anything like that this year. They want this to be a competitive, tough week of golf for the pros, and saving par on some of these massive greens and being able to lag up there to save par, I think it's going to be really crucial this week. Do you agree? Or
yeah, absolutely. That was another stat I was going to bring up is 3-putt avoidance because, you look at the history of this event and a lot of these tournaments are 25 under, Cantlay, I think, won at 27 last year, and then you look at the one year where John Rahm won at 4 under. I think it's not going to be 4 under, I don't think, but it's going to be more in the right in the middle there of that, 10 to 15 under, kind of similar to last week. We're going to have semi-competitive, but we're also going to see some scoring as well from the guys that can keep it clean, stay in the fairway, and get themselves close. So I think this will be really interesting to see kind of how the guys can do at this course that they've never seen.
Okay. So, I mean, you were talking about a couple different things, driving distance, accuracy, approach, all the different. I kind of went in a little different model system this week. Instead of really branching out with a lot of different statistics, I got under my mind, in my mind, I went with, it's a course nobody knows. You've got the top 70 in the world, in the FedEx Cup rankings in this event. Well, top 68 because no Fleetwood, no Cam Smith and some of the live guys, so guys just beyond the top 70, whatever. Everybody understands what I'm saying. I went straight basic stats in my model. I put off the tee, approach, I put putting, I put 3-point avoidance. I put tee to green. So I put 60% of my model off the tee, approach, tee to green. I put shots gained total, putting, and 3-point putt avoidance. And I have one other stat, which we're going to get into in a second. But I just went really, really basic when building my model because I just want the best golfers overall when I'm playing this week. Do you think I'm wrong avoiding some of the things like driving distance or certain like proximities or par 3 scoring or par 5 scoring might be important this week? Do you think I'm leaving myself short here a little bit by just going with the very basic stats this week?
I think the basic stats are fine. I think just you want to make sure you're looking at recent form as well. Obviously, we're in the playoffs, so we're going to be on a run where, I mean, you watch Cantlay last year just catch fire at the end of the year and just go off and take the trophy home. So, you're looking for guys like that, guys that can get hot and hurry.
Build my model. I normally build my model anywhere. I normally use the 36 rounds, last 36 rounds. Sometimes I'll go a little further. Sometimes I'll shrink it up a little bit. I have made my model off the last 12 rounds because I care about recency this week. Also being a no-cut event, something I don't use very often. Normally, I'll have a little percent or two, or I'll just put it at 0% off to the side to see birdies are better, or bogey avoidance depending on the tournament. Because it's a no-cut event, I put DraftKings point scoring in my model because you want everybody's making the cut. Somebody, I don't know, name a volatile player, any volatile player. You don't have to worry about them missing the cut as long as they score big points. They score and they get that 40th finishing place points, or they have one round that they just shoot a 63. That's going to score so many points and differentiate you from everybody else. So I think it's really important to get guys that score fantasy points. That's the name of the game. We're playing fantasy golf here. You want the guys that are going to score the most points this week because you don't have to worry about anybody being super volatile, shooting an 80 on a Friday and missing the cut.
Yeah, that's right, and that's exactly why I got a guy like Cam Young on my betting card this week because he's a volatile guy. He can go 8-9 under in a single round. Obviously, I know he's in a high strength of field where he hasn't won on tour before, but this is the type of event that a guy like that's going to pop. I mean, he was very close at the Open Championship, and that's a major. So, he's been in the spotlight before, and I really like him this week. Volatile guys like Rio, Sam Burns. I mean, these kind of guys that just pop really hard for a round are much more viable this week than guys maybe like, Xander Schauffele, who will consistently go 3-4 under, but, he does that over 4 rounds. That's great. But if Cam Young comes out and shoots an 8 under on Sunday, like he did last week, he's right in it.
So I got a question for you because I was on my man Huntman 10's show with Fantasy Points last night, and he asked me a question, and I really didn't have an exact answer. I didn't know it ahead of time, and I'm still kind of formulating my opinion. How much stock do you put in to where they're at in the FedEx Cup rankings at this point? Because obviously we know they got to make the top 30. So the guys outside the top 30, hit them fighting to get into it, and the guys that are in the top 30 trying to get the best placement possible for next week's tour championship. How much will you put into that when you're thinking about what guys to play this week?
So that's an interesting take because, you obviously have the guys who are, 31 through 45 who have a realistic chance of catching it. But you also have almost half the field who are outside of that range. You got 15, 20 golfers that unless they win the event, they're not going to make East Lake. And so it's interesting because you got the guys up top that are the best overall golfers that are in no matter what. And then you got the guys in the middle where you kind of like, okay, he has to have a good week here, or he could drop out, or he has to have a good week here to get in. So I think it's going to really separate, those guys in the middle and how they handle the pressure.
Yeah, because like I look at a guy like Emilio Grillo. I like him. We'll get into him when we break down this card. But I mean, he's 57th right now in the FedEx Cup standings. I mean, he's probably got to win, maybe a top 2 or 3 to really get to the weekend or to next week. I mean, what's his odds really to win? It's not really high, but he's a guy that can score super low for 2 or 3 rounds. He's a guy that actually, for me, modeled out fantastically this week. and he does a lot of good things. But is he? How serious is he going to take it? Say on Friday and Thursday and Friday, he's in 60th place. Even if he has a great Saturday, does it really get him into a position to win and make next week? I worry that I'm wondering whether I should worry about those type of guys, whether they'll mail it in at the end because they really have no chance. I don't think they will because I still think there's plenty on the line, you know, next year and money and everything else like that they won't. But it kind of got me thinking maybe I should be paying a little bit more attention to it.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, but I think the thing that I'm taking into account is since I've started betting, I told myself I'm not betting on what ifs.
Okay.
So in that situation where, Grillo, who's even if he starts out bad, has he's not going to put in as much effort or so we say, but I'm not going to bet on a guy who, if he has a bad first 2 days, am I willing to take on the risk of him not trying on the weekend? I'm not going to bet for that because that's a what if. What if he has a bad Thursday and Friday? He could come out scorching hot, and then be in contention all weekend. But I'm not going to bet on a what if. Obviously, I'm not going to bet Emiliano Grillo to win, but I will play him in DFS. Well,
Hey, I threw a half a unit because I got him and somebody else who we'll get into later. I saw them at 150 to 1. And I'm like, you know what? 150 to 1, half a unit. They're not going to win. But what if? You never know. So,
fair enough.
I just, like I said, a few pennies, at a couple long shots, they're most likely not going to hit, but you never know. So you take a chance. All right, let's get into this week's card. Let's get into this week's lineup. In the 10K, obviously, these numbers came out pretty early this week. So Cam Smith is in the field on the card, but he withdrew, obviously, early on Monday. So that lead, he was actually priced the highest, which I was kind of surprised. I know he was third in the FedEx Cup standings right now, but kind of surprised that he was priced up number one. But that leaves Rory McIlroy 10-5, John Rahm 10-3, JT 10-1, Will Zalatoris, the winner last week at 10K even. I know Rory McIlroy missed the cut last week, but to me, he's one of my two top favorite plays this week in this top. Like, I could fade Justin Thomas. I could fade Will Zalatoris. Rory McIlroy, even missing the cut, right there with John Rahm as my favorite plays in this top end. What are your thoughts on this top tier here?
So this top tier, we're splitting hairs, right? Like these are the best golfers in the world, and you have to find a reason to not play somebody. I think there's a very viable reason to not play Justin Thomas. He's not in the best form at the moment. The only really good result he put up is, of course, that he's put up great results in the past. But that the driving accuracy scares me a lot. I think he'll be playing out of the rough quite a bit. So I think I'm completely okay fading him. And Rory, I mean, the thing that scares me is where's his mind at? Because I don't know if you saw the article of him after the Open Championship, after he, waved off to the media, and he was crying on his wife's shoulder as they were carting away. So he really wanted to close out the Open, and since he didn't, it's interesting to see where his mind is at. And since he's a top price golfer, I think I would rather go to a ascending John Rahm, who it seems like he may have figured it out. And where a course is really important on driving and playing on hard courses, because they're trying to make it tough on these guys by making a 4-inch rough. So, I'd much rather take a John Rahm at 10-3. And I know you said you were off Zalatoris, but I am okay going back to him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm off Zalatoris. I'm just not sure. Again, you said it. We're splitting hairs here. You got to find a reason to not play one of these guys. And I'm just saying, playoff, Will Zalatoris, the emotions coming off that first win, probably didn't sleep much Sunday night, Monday, probably got to Delaware a little bit later than everybody else, still had all that emotion. Sometimes there could be a letdown. And that and Justin Thomas just not being in perfect form. He just seems off since his major win this year. Last 12 rounds, somebody like JT in this field in the last 12 rounds, JT's 39th in approach. JT is not that bad of an approach player, but for him to fall that far into a stat like that, something just seems off with JT as well. John Rahm, I love. John Rahm, he was one of my main plays last week. I had him on an outright last week. His third and fourth round last week. It's like something clicked in his head. and he was former world number one John Rahm again in that third and fourth round. I bet John Rahm was the first bet that I made this week to win this week. I didn't even do a model or anything like that. As soon as the odds were released, I went right to John Rahm and I clicked on him. I didn't care what it was. It was 14-1. I put 2 units on it. I didn't care. There seems to be a click, something in John Rahm's head. Maybe it's being a new dad. I don't know. He had the kid, right? Yeah, he had the kid. Something about him. He's just there for me. But Rory, I know everything you said about Rory, you're spot on. But I just can't. I'm looking at his stats. He lost. He missed the cut on the number last week. So one shot here or there different. He makes the weekend. Maybe he turns around. Hadn't picked up a golf club since the Open. He said he didn't even eat a vegetable since the Open. He was just, taking some time off. He lost strokes off the tee. It was the first time he lost strokes off the tee since the Valero. He hasn't lost strokes tee to green since the Tour Championship last year. Hasn't lost strokes. It was the first time he lost strokes total since the Valero. I mean, the guy's just so good for so long. I gotta think that Rory McIlroy can pull it together. He got to Wilmington. I think he was one of the first people to get to Wilmington. He went right after he missed the cut. He came right to Delaware. He's been here since the weekend. I got to think he's got a leg up on everybody. And I got to say, Rory and Rahm, I don't know if you can convince me to not put Rory or John Rahm in every single one of my lineups this week.
Yeah, man. I mean, I get it. I love Rory, and I hope he turns it around. Him losing strokes off the tee, I know it was the first time since Valero, but that does stick out to me knowing where he's at mentally.
And he didn't just lose strokes off the tee. He lost 2.5, 3 strokes off the tee. I closed it out. Yeah, 2.5 strokes off the tee. It's not like he just barely lost some strokes.
Right.
He lost a lot of strokes off the tee for a guy like Rory.
Yeah, and he's a prolific driver who usually doesn't do that. Obviously, I think that partly has to do with him not picking up a golf club. So obviously working off some of the rust. So I could certainly see him being a very viable play this week in a no-cut event where if he has one bad round, that's okay. But I'm just worried about the upstairs. I think I'm much more willing to play him next week at Eastlake just to give him some time to get back into things. I will have probably 1 or 2 lineups with him. I'm only playing 10 this week. But he's not going to be a mainstay on my card this week.
I will tell you this. I just did a quick search. It is tied for the second most strokes lost off the tee in his entire career last week. He lost in 2017 at the BMW, held somewhere else, obviously. He lost 5.5 strokes off the tee. And then he lost 2.5 at the Players in 2021 and at the FedEx. I mean, that's going back on a career that has spanned. How long has he been playing? Over a decade now, and it was his second worst round off the tee or tournament off the tee. So I got to think he's not that bad. Even not picking up a golf club, I can't think that he's going to be anywhere near that again.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not trying to talk anyone off.
You are trying to talk me out of it. You're trying to talk me out of it,
man. I'm splitting hairs.
Out Taurus again. All right, let's get into this 9K range here.
All right.
This is a. I don't know when the last time I remember this many guys in the 9K, especially in a small field. I mean, it's only 70 guys, and you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys in the 10 of the 70 guys in this 9K range. Makes it really tough to pick. Patrick Cantlay did not look good last week, but was on a red hot streak. Scotty Scheffler missed the cut. Finau got to be the best golfer in the last 4 to 6 weeks on tour. Xander didn't look great last week. Matthew Fitzpatrick has been great this year. Colin Morikawa, man, he almost, just like John Rahm, almost put it together last week. Burns, Hovland, Im, and of course the darling Tom Kim. All right, start me off here. Where are your eyes going first in this range?
It's got to be Tony Finau, right? I mean, I think it's got to be. I mean, I love Scotty Scheffler's price. Like, we haven't seen him price below 10K since his win at the Masters, I believe. And I just don't really know where his game is at right now. He's kind of lost the putter, and that kind of scares me a little bit on a course that has big greens, so he's going to have the 3-putt avoidance. I don't know off the top of my head where he ranks in the field in that, but again, we're splitting hairs.
In the last 12 rounds, because I got my model set up for 12 rounds, he's 24th in 3-putt avoidance. Okay. He's 10th putting overall. He's number 1 in my model. So He's 5th off the tee in the last 12 rounds, first approach, first tee to green, first shots gained total, 10th putting, 24th 3-putt, and 2nd in DraftKings points. I could stretch it out a little bit, say over the last 36 rounds, go a little bit further back when he wasn't as red hot, and he's still number 1 in my model. 4th off the tee, 3rd approach. Actually, if you go back to 36 rounds, he's 3rd in 3-putt avoidance. So, yeah,
that makes him a little more
he's
interesting
kind of
to
fallen
me.
down in that statistical category there over the last, 12 to 16 rounds a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's going to come down to ownership for me. I think if a lot of people flock to Tony Finau like I'm expecting, and Scheffler's probably, I mean, most golfers that are going to be popular are going to be about 25-30% owned this week.
Mm-hmm.
If we see Scotty Scheffler below 20%, I think I'm locking and loading him just because I think, I mean, those stats are awesome, but Tony Finau is going to get a lot of my attention. I think that's kind of everyone's mindset, though. So again,
early numbers. And again, it's early. Tony Finau's at 25.7% projection ownership, and Scotty Scheffler's at 16.3. So I mean, it's still early. I mean, I with a small field like this, you're gonna have to wait till as late as you can Wednesday to really get your best options on these ownership percentages. But that's where they're at right now on this Tuesday evening. So.
Yeah, I just think everyone's going to flock to Tony, kind of forget about Scheffler a little bit. And then that also leaves Patrick Cantlay at that weird spot where he's in between the 10K guys, but he's also above Tony Finau. So what is his ownership going to look like, knowing that he's the defending champion, obviously at a different course, and just kind of seeing where it lies. So I think Cantlay and Scheffler are going to gain my interest depending on ownership. Tony Finau is my first look. Where are you looking up here?
Well, I agree with everything you said on Tony Finau. And before I even say anything, it's really interesting, and I would love to get your opinion on it. It's a 70-person field, 68-person field. Ownership's going to be totally different than normal. And people normally 20%. Oh no, we got to fade that 20% guy or that 10% guy. Let's pivot off of him to an 8% guy. Numbers are going to be totally different this week, so you kind of got to think about it a little differently. Like right now, Rory is just around 20% projections. That's really great. You know what I mean? It's like normally if Rory was 20, you might consider bumping down to somebody else. But right now, Rory at 20, that's not bad. I almost, unless a guy is projected to hit close to 30%, I'm not even worried about ownership percentage on any of these guys this week. I might have lineups that have over 100% combined ownership. And I know that sounds crazy, but I kind of feel like it's a little bit skewed, these numbers, in a small field like this. Do you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, I think the only time I'm really going to worry about anyone over 25% is if it's like 6,500 or under. Those value guys, I think, are obviously going to, like, I think Rio's going to pick up a lot of ownership. I really want to play him because I think he models out really well, but I'm also not going to play a 33% Emiliano Grillo at a course with this type of talent. So
just so you know, off the top of my head right now, and these are Fantasy National, who's a partner with the show, fantasynational.com. Make sure you check them out. If you like their model making tools, any of their stuff on their site, and you sign up for any of their programs, make sure you let them know. Fairway to Heaven sent you. Right now, the top guys' ownership percentage, and again, these numbers on a Tuesday, you can add on the trending upward guys, you can add 3 to 5% to these guys by tomorrow afternoon, but for sure. Tony Finau's number 1 at 25.7. He'll probably come in at right around 30%, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Cam Young at 22.5. John Rahm at 20.5. Rory's at 19.9, and Cam Davis is at 19.5. All 5 of those guys are going to be over 25% by tomorrow afternoon. Guarantee it. It's just how far over 25% do those guys go. Right now, Emiliano Grillo is only, well, he's actually I just refreshed. He's at 11.9. I could see him going up to 15, 17%, and I still will consider him at that price, at that ownership. But if he does somehow magically shoot up the board to 20, 25, then maybe we have to start talking about it. But anyway, back to this 9K range. Finau, like you said, 100%. I'm on board with Finau. It just comes down to ownership. I think there's 3 names to play in this range. Tony Finau at 25%, as long as he stays in that range. I think Patrick Cantlay, right now he's projected at 13.5%. I know Patrick Cantlay did not have a good week of golf last week. Still made the cut, but not a great week of golf. Lost strokes everywhere except for around the green. But that stretch he's had this year since the missed cut, the PGA Championship, 3rd, 14th, 13th, 4th, 8th, 2nd. I mean, the guy's had a fantastic season, and no one's talking. I mean, he's following up his FedEx Cup win last year with another fantastic season. I think he can right the ship this week. He's good enough. He's well-rounded enough. He does everything well that I think you can justify him. And I think Matthew Fitzpatrick, I mean, quietly one of the best golfers on tour this year. I know it's hard to say quiet when he wins a U.S. Open, but still, it seems like nobody's talking about Matthew Fitzpatrick. Since the U.S. Open win, before the U.S. Open win, it seems like he's just this like, yeah, it's Matthew Fitzpatrick. And you used to be able to talk about Matthew Fitzpatrick where there were certain types of courses that fit him. I kind of feel like every course fits Matthew Fitzpatrick. So they're the 3 names that I'm zoning in on in this 9K range.
Yeah, I really like Fitzpatrick. I think a lot of the buzz kind of died down once he won the U.S. Open because then his price shot up. A lot of people, I mean, I think at the Masters we got him at like 8K flat or something like that.
Right.
And I was all over Matt Fitzpatrick at that point, but now that he's priced up at, I mean, he's 9,500, which is fine. But I really like his all-around play. As you mentioned, he's just an all-around pretty good player. So I really like him, especially if this course does play tougher in terms of the scale of like last week. I mean, it was a tough course, but it wasn't that tough. I think he really shines at tough courses, ones that really challenge you to be good at everything. And I think with this rough being the way it is, you guys all saw the footage. I think if he can keep it in the fairway, I think he's going to, honestly, I mean, he's a great putter as well. So, you know, he can go low if he needs to. I think it's just going to be, I think it's another thing that's going to be ownership for me. And I think he's going to be pretty low compared to the guys around him.
Yeah. Well, right now, Fitzpatrick's just a tick under 17%. So Tony Finau, 25%, 17% Matthew Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
I think that answers the question there. All right, let's get into the 8K range because I want to talk about your guy that you already mentioned at the beginning of the show, Cam Young. Is there any doubt that he's the rookie of the year on tour this year? I mean, I know there's been a lot of really good rookies that have been, that have debuted this year on tour, but he's got to be the rookie of the year, right?
Oh, no question. I mean, in any other year, I think you could consider like Davis Riley or Sahith Theegala. Like the rookie class has been fantastic this year, but Cam Young far and away has just been awesome. I mean, he started out a little slow and then he gained some traction, and now he's right at the top with the top guys. I mean, he's 8,900 in a field like this. He's a rook, and he drives the ball super well. It's a long course, so that fits him really well. I think obviously he's popular for a reason. He's second highest ownership according to Fantasy National right now. So, I mean, I think he's a great play. And I mean, look at the guys around him. So we got Jordan Spieth, who the heck knows where his game is at this point.
I don't think I've talked about Jordan Spieth in over a month.
Yeah, and it's for a good reason. I mean, Tom Kim, he's everyone's darling, but at 9K, are we really playing a guy who's just earned his PGA membership? I don't know if I would jump that high. Shane Lowry, who did okay last week, kind of had a rough Sunday, which kind of bummed me out because he was in a lineup that I had a runner in and to drive the green. Kind of killed my vibe a little bit, especially actually Saturday. He had 2 double bogeys, so that really hurt me. But another guy who plays tough courses very well. So if we're putting that into effect, Shane Lowry's a nice play. But Cam Young is, I mean, you saw him at the Open. He's a great fantasy golf scorer. So fantasy points are going to be great driver. I just think he's far and away one of the best course fits in the field.
So you do not worry about his bad putting because, I mean, last week he lost. We talked about Rory McIlroy having his second worst off the tee week of his career, 2.5 strokes. Wow, that's a lot. Cam Young lost 5.5 strokes putting last week. And I know he hasn't had a 10-year career, but in his career, let me see here, on Fantasy National, I mean, they've got events tracked for him, on some of the Korn Ferry Tour events and some of his amateur events and stuff like that. It was his worst week putting ever. But he's had the Memorial where he finished 60th. He had close to that. His Wells Fargo, he finished second. He lost 2.5 strokes. He's lost strokes putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times since late in 2021. So, I mean, on a course where putting is going to play a big factor, he's 26 in the last 12 rounds on 3 putt avoidance, 64th in this field in putting. It kind of concerns me at 22, 23, probably gets up to 27% ownership. That putting really worries me a little bit this week.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it all show. I mean, we're splitting hairs on guys, right? We're finding reasons to not play them. And I think it's very, viable. Like if you guys don't want to play Cam Young, that's fine. I'm cool with that. Just take him off your player pool. I'll play them all. That's fine. I've already bet him. He was my first bet. I put, I think $6 on him or something like that at 25 to 1. But I mean, yeah, putting is a volatile stat though. And a guy can come out and lose 5 strokes putting, and then next week come out and gain 5 strokes putting. So that's why
I want to play Cam Young. I really do, and it's just that the one thing that I have written down with his name is a question mark and the word putter, and that's the only thing that might sway my decision on him.
Yeah, I mean, Will Zalatoris isn't generally a good putter on tour, but so it's just one of those stats. It's all over the place, and don't look too far into it in terms of making your selections. But I think it's a good point though. I think putting is going to be somewhat important, but I just love his course fit.
Okay. I mean, I don't have a lot of plays in this 8K range because of my love of Rory, John Rahm, Tony Finau, Matthew Fitzpatrick this week, even Patrick Cantlay. I kind of feel like I've got to fade a lot of this 8K range due to the small field and how to build a balanced lineup and get the prices in there. I want to like Joakim Niemann. He's been one of my favorite golfers this year. I know he had a decent week last week, 13th. It kind of feels like he finished tied for 13th last week, but it kind of feels like he finished like 25th or 30th just because it was so uneventful. And he has tailed off a little bit since his hot run earlier this season. But outside of Joakim Niemann and my teetering on the fence on Cam Young, I'm pretty much staying away from this 8K range. So are there any other guys that you like in this range?
So there's 2 of them. And one of them was a guy that nobody played last week because of his course history. And that's Max Homa.
Yep.
Max Homa, we got at a great price last week. I had him in pretty much every lineup that was 6 of 6, 5 of 6. And he played great. And this is the best version of Max Homa that I think we've seen ever. He's, peaking in his career. He does it in all the good stats. His ball striking's great. His putter's volatile, but that's okay. I'm fine with that. And the only place he really struggles is around the green, which is not going to be that important this week. And I just think he's at a great price range where, he's going to have lesser ownership than a guy like Cam Young. And I think he's got just as much win equity. So
he is
I love
under
Max
10% projection right now.
What is he? 10?
Under 10%.
Under 10. Yeah. So that makes me love him even more. And he's priced around guys like, Hideki Matsuyama. Who is playing Hideki Matsuyama?
What?
Like, who is playing him? Nobody. So I love Max Homa. I think he's at a great price. I think he's a perfect pivot in the 8K range if you're going balanced. And if you end up in that range, I think Max Homa is a perfect fit. And then the last guy who was my kind of not value play, but underlooked guy last week was Adam Scott. Adam Scott had a great week last week. I think he finished T9 or T5, something like that. Put up a great performance. And I think he was in like pretty much the same. I think it was the same price last week at 8K flat. And I think he's just a guy who's been here before. He's had a long career and he knows when to turn it on. I don't know exactly where he is in the FedEx standings, but I want to say he's around that 30 mark. So I think he's
hold on. I was thinking about him earlier. Let me.
Yeah, I think he's got some work to do to get in, but I think he's within.
He's 46 right now, Adam Scott.
Yeah, so he's within range. I mean, he needs a top 25 for sure, maybe even a top 20. But I think that's very capable. I mean, he's very capable of that. So I think Adam Scott is someone who gets a really hot putter at times. If he can keep it in the fairway, I think he's a guy who is going to go low owned. I want to say he's probably going to have the same amount of ownership as Max Homa, probably right around 10%, maybe a little lower. but I mean,
He's a little bit lower. He's actually, you want to hear something really funny right now?
is he at like 5%?
No, he's 0.3% less than Hideki Matsuyama. One's at 7, one's at 6.7. Why are more people playing Hideki Matsuyama than Adam Scott right now?
All right, Adams. I may end up losing a lot of money on Adam Scott or winning a lot of money on Adam Scott this week because that is just fantastic. I'm never playing Corey Connors again.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm never playing Corey Connors again because anytime he's on the green, it scares the crap out of me. Like I remember distinctly because he was in one of my runners on Sunday, and he ended up bogeying a hole where he was like 24 feet from the green after his second shot. Mm-hmm. On a course where 3-putt avoidance is really important, Corey Connors is going to get into 0 of my lineups. Yeah, absolutely 0.
I agree. I have basically decided I'm never playing Corey Connors ever again, except for at the Masters. He's basically a lock for my player pool at the Masters and nowhere else. Because I've fallen trapped to Corey Connors way too many times. I want to jump back to Max Homa for a second. Everything you said about Max Homa, man, I did not have him in one of my lineups last week, but I bet him 50-1 outright. And I was so pissed off because everything you said was spot on. And it's like, it's just bringing back a bad memory. I'm like, I wish I would have put him in my lineups last week. I mean, he really was never in win contention last week. So I wish I would have taken that money I invested in him as an outright and used him in some lineups because Max Homa, I should not have followed that course history because he is a completely different golfer now than he was in years past. So I love that. And everything else you said. Tyrell Hatton is kind of a guy that I don't know. We talk about no cut event and volatility. Mm-hmm. Isn't that like the definition of what Tyrell Hatton is?
Volatile? Tyrell Hatton's like, I don't know.
I mean, he might break 3 clubs, but he might shoot a 62 on Friday. Like you really don't know what's going to happen with him. And I'm not going to play him, but I've heard a few people on shows talk about if you want to take some high risk, high reward type guys in lineups, not betting, but in lineups, maybe you throw a Hatton in a lineup here or there because there's a small little chance that this guy could go low 1 or 2 rounds this week.
Yeah, Hatton is another guy who is on the same list as Corey Connors and guys that I'm not going to play. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I don't think he's a good golfer. It has to do with the mentals. Because if Tyrell Hatton is, I don't know where exactly he is in the standings either. Like I said, I didn't really care about it, but I also kind of do. With a guy with mentals like that, yeah, I do kind of care because if he is in the bottom 10 positions in this tournament,
51 right now in FedEx Cup.
51, yeah. So he's got a lot of work to do.
He's got to pretty much win,
basically. And I think if he starts out slow, he double bogeys, a hole on Friday, snaps a putter, and then goes, F this, I'm done. He's very capable of a withdrawal. I'm not going to say he will, but he's capable of it. So I would rather play a guy like Adam Scott, who's, he's from Australia. No one in Australia ever gets stressed about anything. So I would much rather take an Adam Scott rather than a Tyrell Hatton. But that's just my 2 cents. You guys play whoever you want.
I agree. I agree with you. It's just something that I heard a few people smarter than me mention his name and that theory of taking that volatility. And I'm going to take some volatile players down in the lower 7K or 6K range. But, it made sense what they were saying a little bit. Let's get into the 7K range. And let's start with the chalk of the 7K range, and that's Cam Davis. I mean, again, another guy that's just playing fantastic golf right now. Last 4 events, all in the top 16. He hasn't missed a cut since the Wells Fargo in May. I mean, his tee to green numbers, his off the tee numbers, even his approach numbers, last 4 or 5 rounds or 4 or 5 events are just phenomenal. And again, I said I'm not paying attention to ownership, but Cam Davis 7,600, 20+%. It's going to be tough to pull the trigger, but I kind of feel like you have to and find some other spot in your card to kind of balance it out because there's just no reason not to play him.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a reason. Okay. We don't know where his drive will land.
That's true.
And in 4-inch rough, if we're splitting hairs on guys, especially with guys who, you know, are that popular in a range where you can get really different really easy.
Mhm.
I'm playing no Cam Davis this week,
Okay.
and and it's not because I don't think he's in great form. I think he's in great form,
Mhm.
but in a field where it's very easy to get different on a guy in this range, I'm
Mhm.
much more willing to just put him on my betting card. Last week I bet him at 100 to 1,
Okay.
but I didn't play him in any DFS lineups
Mhm.
because I was so worried about the Pinot Rough, and he
Mhm.
proved me wrong. He put up a great finish. Now, do I go back on my own research here and play him this week at 20+% owned, or do I trust my research and say, okay, if he hits a wild drive, you know, he could end up bad.
Mhm.
But this is a no cut event.
And
So
that's the thing there.
I'm still
Like, he
wrestling
might
with
have
it.
one of those rounds where he is just brutal off the tee, but he scores so many birdies and makes so many points that he might shoot a 75 on one round, but he
Mm-hmm.
might shoot a 64 the next round. And DraftKings point wise, I think it's worth the chance. I don't know. That's just where I'm leaning, and I know that's why everybody else is leaning in that direction. And there will be some number, I haven't figured it out yet. There will be some ownership percentage if he goes up to that. Like, all right, yeah, no, I can't do that. But I haven't figured out what that number is yet.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, where
Yep.
else are you looking in the 7K range? Because there's some interesting plays in the top half and the bottom half of this range. Some some golfers that are priced right that are like just this is the range of the guys that have got hot late in the season and gotten themselves into this part of the FedEx Cup. None of these guys were huge names early in the season and just kind of hung around. These are all the guys that are hot late this season.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm looking at three guys in particular that are 7,400, 7,300, and 7,300, right
Mhm.
next to each other. Taylor Pendrith
Absolutely.
has been playing fantastic, coming back from his injury. Um, Again, I think he's a guy that probably has to like top 5 to get to East Lake.
Hmm.
So he has a lot of work to do. But I don't. I trust that even if he does have a bad round, that he's not just going to give up on the event. He just doesn't seem like that type of guy. He's Canadian. He's just gonna, have fun out there. I it's one of those things. And JT Poston, I really wish I had played him last week because I looked at his name and I said, you know what, I kind of like JT Poston this week, and then I just kind of forgot about him, and I think he put up what a T like 25 or T26 something like that. Played very well. He's just been very hot this year. Has a lot of volatility. Is one of those guys that can get really hot and around. I
Hmm.
think JT Poston is your Cam Davis pivot.
Okay.
I think that's why I'm okay with getting off Cam Davis because I think JT Poston is that player just without the driver. Um, he's a very good putter. He with these very big greens, I think that's going to help him a lot.
Hmm.
As long as he doesn't, really spray it on the drives, I think he's going to be a really really good play here at 7,300. He may pick up a bit of ownership. He'll probably be around 15 to 17% owned,
Hmm.
but I think he'll definitely be less than Cam Davis. And I think there are guys in this range that'll soak up some ownership, like Cam Davis, Brian Harmon, Russell
Hmm.
Henley, those type of guys. I think they'll soak up a lot of ownership. I think Poston will too, but I think on a lesser amount and at a lesser price. I like him a lot. And then finishing up with Thagala, he's everyone says he's a field golfer, and in a no cut event, that is actually a really really good thing because he may start off shooting maybe over par,
Hmm.
but he's going to figure it out and he's going to just get better progressively through the days.
Hmm.
And you may look at the leaderboard, and after him being +2 after the first day and being like T65, you may
Hmm.
see him at T25 at the end of the tournament because he felt it out. He figured out what he made mistakes on. I think he's just going to be one of those guys like a Xander Schauffele, who's just a constant, really good no cut player.
Hmm.
He's going to be really good for fantasy scoring. He can get hot. So those are the three guys I'm kind of looking in that 7K range.
I absolutely. I mean, I don't have Tagala. I mean, I'm kind of just on him, but Pendrith. Like I said, Cam Davis, Pendrith, at JT Poston. I mean, I had him in. I don't remember about 40% of my lineups last week because I had the same thing, and I did not forget about him. I left him in, and I will keep him in the lineups again this week. I want your opinion on Davis Riley, we just talked about Cam Young, Rookie of the Year, and you said it yourself. Maybe in another season, Davis Riley would be the Rookie of the Year. But I kind of feel like he's plateaued a little bit. But then I saw a little bit about him, of him play last week, and I kind of felt like the last couple events he's played in, maybe he plateaued, but maybe he's actually his 2 missed cuts gave him the time to, I don't want to say reset, but refocus maybe. And I'm not saying he's a great play, but I don't want people to write Davis Riley off completely just yet. He's not probably going to make it to next week, but he's a solid golfer still, and he won't be in my player pool, but I want people to remember the name Davis Riley. So I want to keep bringing him up because I think he did plateau. Then he rebooted, refreshed, and I think he's starting to turn a corner so that when we get into the fall swing to start next year, he's a guy that you guys got to watch out for on the PGA Tour for sure.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it last time I was on the show with Davis Riley. We had that Davis Riley Sahith Theegala conversation when they were both priced at like 87, 8,800. I forget what event it was off the top of my head, maybe the 3M Open or something like that. But I think these guys are really good golfers. Obviously, like you said, I don't think they're going to get to East Lake, neither one of them. But I think they're definitely names to watch out for next year. Davis Riley, I think, is just priced too high for me. If he was like 6,900, I would be much more in on a Davis Riley. But with him at 7.5, I would much rather get Postman at 73.
I want to ask you one other guy in the 7K range. I'm not playing him. I want to know why he's the second highest projected owner right under Cam Davis in this range, and that's Mr. Mito, Mr. Italian.
I knew exactly who you're talking about, Ray.
He missed 4 cuts in a row, and he goes out last week, finishes 42nd to FedEx. I mean, he lost strokes off the tee, around the green, putting. It's not like he even played that well. And all of a sudden, he's the second highest guy projection-wise in this range. We talk about crazy people playing Hideki. Are people crazy, or am I crazy for thinking he's a bad play? Because I want nothing to do with Mito anymore.
Yeah, no, he's just popping in a lot of models that I've seen, and I'm not really sure if they're just weighing the early Mito too much. But I've seen him pop up in a lot of models myself. So I'm with you. I'm not playing Mito because I think he's kind of plateaued, since we're using that word. I think he plateaued already. And funny enough, the guy right below him is the same kind of way, Seamus Power. I lost a lot of lineups to Seamus Power at the Open and last week.
So did this guy right here.
So
this guy did too.
Now that I've given up on Seamus Power, maybe everyone should play him because he seems to do well in events that I don't play him in. But he doesn't really seem like the kind of guy that gets really hot and just like keeps making birdies. So I don't think he's really that fantasy scorer guy that I'm missing out on. I think the guy that I'm okay with fading this week, even though I know he can get really hot, is Denny McCarthy. Because he's such a good putter. He's kind of like JT Poston, except like a lot more volatile, which is funny that we're saying that JT Poston is more consistent than a guy, because JT Poston is also very volatile. But
because Cam Smith withdrew in the last 12 rounds, JT Poston is the number 1 putter in this field, and he's the 3rd best flag putter in this field. So,
and Denny McCarthy's not far behind. I know that.
Actually, in the last 12 rounds, he's now, because if you take the one, because Cam Smith was number 1, you take him out, he's 22nd in putting in the last 12 rounds. So if you're looking at just super short term, his putter's gotten cold by his standards, Denny McCarthy.
Do you know how his stats ended up last week then? Because
I can tell you. Hold on.
He had a pretty good performance last week up until I think Sunday.
So last week he had 3.1 strokes gained putting.
Yeah, okay.
But he missed. See, the thing is, last 12 rounds, you're going back 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're going back 4 events because he has 2 missed cuts, and he did lose strokes in some of those missed cuts. So that's why he had the 6th place finish at the John Deere where he gained 2.5 strokes and 3.1 where he gained at the last week. But his 2 missed cuts at the Wyndham and the Rocket Mortgage kind of messed those numbers up a little bit. Hell, even in some of his missed cuts, he missed the cut to Travelers. He still gained 4 strokes putting, even though he missed the cut there. So, he is a really good putter, but I'm looking at the most recent form possible for this event. And, that he's just not as good against the rest of the field because of that.
Yep. I was just curious because I saw he popped a little last week, and it was one of the few weeks that I really didn't think about Denny McCarthy because generally I do. But all right,
all right. Let's
you
get into
good?
the 6K now. Yeah, I mean the 6K range. I got 2-3 names that I'm zoning in on. Maybe I'll get Trey Mullinex back into my fold a little bit. I know he's red hot as well. Taylor Moore popping the models,
Yeah.
playing red hot. We've already talked about Emiliano Grillo a bunch. He's actually fourth in my model this week. I love him. So, and I already said I bet him 150-1. The other guy that I bet 150-1 is also in this part of this range, and that's Wyndham Clark. I've talked about Wyndham Clark a lot on this show over the last month or two. Wyndham Clark is one of those golfers. He's not in the Davis Riley mode he's not a rookie anymore. He's been in the league on the tour for a little while now. But Wyndham Clark's a different golfer now. Wyndham Clark's not the guy that only makes the cut at the Barracuda Open or the Punta Cana Open. Wyndham Clark can contend in bigger fields. And this is a no-cut event. Wyndham Clark's one of those guys that's going to shoot 64 and then 75 and then 64 and 75. And he did it last week. I had him in a bunch of my lineups. And if he has a slightly better weekend, I go from turning a smidge of a profit to a massive profit if Wyndham Clark just has one more round with 2 or 3 strokes better. But Wyndham Clark and Grillo are my 2 top plays. Of course, Moore, like I said, Taylor Moore and Mullinex are just red hot golfers, but I just don't know enough about them. I just know what I've seen in the last 3 or 4 weeks with these guys. So I don't know if I could trust them in this kind of an event.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 6K range, and there's a couple guys that kind of pop to me. Then they're the same guys that you just mentioned. Grillo, Wyndham Clark, and Taylor Moore, I think, are my 3 favorite just because of their price range. I look at Harold Varner, and I'm trying to figure out if I like him or not because he's a guy that plays
Harold
very
Varner
well.
I didn't even see his name on the card.
Yeah, 6,900 for Harold Varner. I think that's one of the lowest prices we've seen, at least recently, because he's been playing very well. But I don't know. He's one of those guys that pop in like good fields generally, but he also had a very bad week last week. He missed the cut. I think he was like +4 or something like that. So he didn't have a good week last week, but he caught my eye because Harold Varner is not generally a guy I've seen the 6K
for as great as Varner played this year, he's missed 3 of his last 5 cuts. And one of those made cuts was a 43rd at the Travelers. So he has not played great as of late. Like I said, if I don't see him in that mid to upper 7, low 8s, I just assume he's not in the field. I honestly didn't even realize he was in the field. That's kind of my bad there. But when you said his name, I was like, is he messing up there? Is he looking at the wrong week or the wrong stat sheet? Yeah, I'm taking chances in this 6K range. Like I was talking last night, and Hunter brought up like you could take the sure thing of a Bazudenhout or a Kisner or Noren. They're all going to shoot, 69, 70, 71 all weekend long. But you take your chances in this range since it's a no-cut event, and you play the guys that are either going to Moore. He might finish 5th. He might finish 65th. But you take that chance in this range, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And then the one other guy that I think has got a lot of the community's attention, and I don't know how warranted it is, but Alex Noren has been talked about a lot. And I think it has to do more with his playoff run last year than it really has to do with him actually playing this year. I mean, he's an around the green guy who plays well at tough courses. Around the green doesn't really matter this week. So he's a guy that I'm completely fine writing off my player pool, because I would much rather take a shot on Grillo or Clark or Taylor Moore because they're less and don't depend on around the green play. So I think Alex Noren should be talked about a lot less. And then one last guy that I wanted to mention just because he's kind of hot right now is Andrew Putnam.
Okay.
Andrew Putnam, he's 6,200. He's spooky. I don't love playing him, but he's going to get 1 or 2 of my lineups because he's one of those guys that can get hot.
And he's a great putter.
I don't think Andrew Putnam wins this event. I don't think he top 5s, but he could be one of those sneaky guys that's like T16 or T19, something like that, that pays off his price really well because he's a guy that honestly he eagles quite a bit, which is really good for fantasy scoring. And if you're taking a guy at 6,200, you might as well take a guy who can score in a no cut event. So even if he finishes T55, but he has 3 eagles, yeah, he may have a lot more bogeys than the rest of the field, but he's still going to score more fantasy points. So I just thought I'd throw his name out there.
I'm going to throw one other name, and I'm intrigued because again, if I want to build a lineup with John Rahm and Rory McIlroy in it, I'm going to have to find some value somewhere, and I'm going to give you this guy's stats first.
Please don't tell me it's JJ Spawn.
No, it's not actually.
Okay, good.
Good guess, but no. All right, this guy. Some weeks he loses strokes on approach. Some weeks it's off the tee. Some weeks he loses strokes putting. You just never know. This guy, just this calendar year, I just did the count. Just this calendar year, he's missed 10 cuts, but he's also got 2 second-place finishes. He's got a 3rd-place finish, a 15th-place finish, finished 20th just a couple weeks ago, and that's Kurt Kitayama. I know he's one of the most inconsistent golfers, but he's a guy that could put up a 62. He's a guy that people love betting him first-round leader because he comes out hot and then he falls apart. In a no-cut event where you just want guys that are going to make DraftKings points, a guy that's got 10 missed cuts, where you could just throw those 10 missed cuts out the window. He's not going to miss the cut. Maybe you get top 10 Kurt Kitayama this week. The odds say no, but the guy, it's not like he's always bad at one thing. You know, he's got a couple weeks where he lost strokes putting, and then he gained strokes putting. You know, his 2nd place at, let's say, the Mexico Open, he gained across the board, so that's not a good one. And that's not a good one either. All right, his 15th at the Wells Fargo, lost strokes at putting and around the green, but gained 10.3 strokes tee to green. Last week misses the cut, loses strokes tee to green, but gains strokes putting. So you don't know what you're going to get with him. He is as completely volatile as there could be in this field, and there's a reason why he's only 6K. But I'm actually going to, while I talk here, I'm going to test build a lineup. If I go Rory and John Rahm, and then I put Kitayama in the lineup, that puts me at 7,700 left. So then I can mess around and have a half decent lineup. You could do him and Clark in the lineup and really save some money, stars and scrubs. And now I'm back in the 8Ks for my last 2 spots. I don't know. It's something that intrigued me because I was looking for guys that could put up a 63 this week. Kurt Kitayama is just one of the names that jumped out at me.
You know what's funny too is when you were talking about Kitayama, I really didn't dig like too deep outside of glancing at Andrew Putnam. Cameron Tringale is 6,200. He's been not good recently.
He's been not good.
But Cameron Tringale finished T6 at the Scottish Open. He finished T14 at the U.S. Open. He's a guy who can get hot. He's a very popular first-round leader type of bet guy. And he's 6,200. I think that's probably the best name that I've seen down in this range that I feel like could actually like put up a top 5. Because, I mean, he can get red hot. He's a guy who, like I said, T14 at the U.S. Open. That's you have to be somewhat good to T14 at the U.S. Open. So, obviously, he's gone through kind of a rough stretch here. I mean, his best finish in his last 4 events is T57 at the Rocket Mortgage. But, I mean, Cameron Tringale used to be like, what, 8,900, 8,700 at these weaker field events? I mean,
absolutely.
Wow.
All right, take a look at this. I just did a lineup build here. Put Rory and Rahm and Cam Young in it and Cam Davis. And all I had to do was put Kitayama and Wyndham Clark to make that fit. I mean, why not, right? I mean, I'm not going to enter this. This is a $3 single entry. I'm not entering it in this lineup. But if you're doing a mass GPP, I mean, if you want to talk about top to bottom, giving yourself some sure things and some different things to make you stand out, this might be one of those lineups. I don't know. Would you feel confident in a no-cut event rolling with a lineup like this?
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good to me. I mean, you've got the high volatility guys in there. You've got, I mean, and high volatility is really all you need in an event like this, right? I mean, it's a no cut event. I mean, why not throw out these guys and just hope that they
Something else here.
pop one time? I mean, really,
We
that's
put Kitayama in a lineup to start, and then let's go with my 9K loves here: Finau and Fitzpatrick and Cam Young, because you love Cam Young. Let's just see what this does here. The lineup. There's Cam Young. That still leaves me with 7,900. So you could still go Cam Davis and then 83. So yeah. All right. I don't like this build. I don't like this build at all because then I'm gonna have to go all the way down to like Pendrith or something like that to make that lineup build work. So it doesn't work there. It does not work there. But yeah, I just want to mess around with that a little bit. I think it's important to try to mess around a little bit this week because you want to stand out, but you also I don't know. Ownership percentage is going to be so weird and wonky this week, and the no cut aspect of it. Sorry, are you all in saying that Cam Young's winning this week?
he was my first click bet, and he's by far, I think, the best course fit.
Okay.
And I
I
was
might be throwing a Cam Young bet out just for you, just because of you.
honestly, if you aren't sold on Cam Young, but you feel like you should do something with him, bet him and don't play him in DFS.
Yeah, that's what
And I
kind of did
think,
with Backoma last week, and I kind of regretted it.
yeah. So I just, since you built a lineup, I just built one myself just because I've got DraftKings in my background here. So what do you think about this lineup? I started it with Will Zalatoris.
Okay.
I didn't go up to Rory or Rahm, but I got Zalatoris, Finau, Cam Young, Max Homa, Grillo, and Tringale.
Hold on. I got to do this again here. So hold on. Grillo, Tringali. I have to put it in on my side to
Yeah,
be able
yeah,
to
yeah.
do it.
Just to see it, yeah.
Grillo, Tringali, Zalatoris, and who else?
Finau, Cam Young, and Homa. Leaves you with 100 to go.
Wow. Kind of let's put this up on the screen so everybody can see this here. I kind of like this. I mean, these are guys that I'm questioning playing Zalatoris and Cam Young and Max Homa. Tringali wasn't on my radar till you mentioned him, honestly. But
Yeah, he wasn't on my radar until I saw his
you make some
price.
solid points about him there. Man, because it's a no cut event, I love having the Zalatoris, Finau, Young, Homa. Those four right there. If you're saying to play those four guys, I got to play Grillo and Tringali to go with those four guys. Man, that's a hard thing to say no to right there. I like it.
Yeah, I mean it's got the volatility. I mean Tringale may come 70th, but
Yeah.
he also might put up more fantasy points than the
He's
guy who
got
finishes in 50th.
He's got 4 top 10s. He's averaging 61.3 fantasy points per tournament. So, that's not bad. Not bad at all. I like that. I like that a lot. All right, so before we wrap this show up, who wins the FedEx Cup playoffs between this week and next week? Who ends up finishing number 1 and getting that paycheck of like $600 billion?
Would I be the weirdest person ever to say Cam Smith? Like, I like.
You would be, but I get what you're saying.
So he's second right now, right? So
He's third right now. He's third.
He's third. He's third. Okay. So it's what? Rory and who else above him?
So it's Zalatoris 1, Scheffler 2, Cam Smith 3, Burns, Finau, Xander, Cantley, Sepp Straka in 8, Rory 9, and JT 10.
Rory's 9? Wow. Holy
Rory
crap, I need
fell
to pay
from
attention.
6 to 9. Here, I'll put it up on the screen
Wow.
so everybody can see it. I got it
Okay.
up on another screen here. I'll share this so everybody can see where the top
How
10
is
is.
Sepp Straka is 7?
He's
No
8.
way. Or 8.
He's played
What?
31 events this year. He's got 1 win, 4 top 10.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love
August
Willie
14th,
Z
so
after
it
his.
is updated. So
I love Willie Z. Looking at this list now that I actually like know the standings here, I think it's got to be Scheffler, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I would think it would be Scheffler. I said last week that I really thought Rory was the one that was going to beat Scheffler for the FedEx Cup. I really did. Maybe an outside chance of Tony Finau. You
I was
could
gonna say
maybe tell
it's got to be Scheffler fee now. I think.
yeah, I, I think if Rory wins this week, he's only. I don't know what you get exactly for points for winning this
Mhm.
week. But I think if Rory came out and wins this week, it would put him in first or really close to first place. Um, Rory will probably need a first place in a top 5 next week to do it. And there's not many guys better than Rory that could do it. But it's going to be Scotty Scheffler, in my opinion, or Tony Finau that wins it, in my opinion.
Also, can we just talk about the awesome answer that Rory McIlroy had for the question of is the FedEx Cup the hardest trophy to win in golf? And the man says it's the Super Bowl trophy, the hardest to win in football. And the reporter was so mad at the smart-ass answer that he said, "We're talking about golf, Rory." That was probably one of the best answers I've seen from a stupid interview question that I've seen in a while. So I just had to mention that. That was really funny.
In the last couple weeks, month or so, with everything that's been going on with the Live Golf Tour, Rory McIlroy has gone from one of my favorite golfers to my favorite golfer, just because of how much passion he has and has shown. Like, I didn't realize how much he cared about the PGA Tour. I knew he cared. I knew he was a great golfer, et cetera, et cetera. But the passion he's shown about the guys that are leaving, same thing with John Rahm as well. What they're showing, I mean, it's just earned a new level of respect from me and has put them up on such a high pedestal now that they're kind of, taking the forefront. I can't wait to hear all the reports from tonight's meeting, which with Tiger and Ricky and all the golfers that are meeting together tonight to talk about it and all. That'll be something we talk about next week, I'm sure. I can't wait, but I love that some of these big names. Honestly, I've said it before, Ricky. Unless Rory goes, unless John Rahm goes, Scotty Scheffler, even Cam Smith going to Live is not going to affect the PGA that much until one of those top names, famous names go. I think it's meaningless. So Rory and Rahm standing up for the PGA Tour the way they have, I mean, I want to see Rory, and maybe I'm a little blinded by Rory now. Recently, my affection for him because of the way he's acted and spoken out and everything like that.
Yeah, I really love that they had a meeting about it. I think that's fantastic. But I'm on the train of until Liv gets any sort of TV broadcast rights, they're not going to be crap. Like if you
Absolutely.
don't have TV rights, you're not going to make money. And they're
Have
paying
you
these
watched any of it?
guys.
I have not watched any of it.
No, and well, it's impossible to watch it. They don't have TV rights.
I think they're
So
on YouTube somewhere, sometime, something like that. I
but
vaguely
would I
remember
go out
seeing
of my
some
way to
YouTube
do
channel.
that? Would the regular Joe Schmo do that? No.
No,
So until they get TV rights, they're not even going to be even a threat to the PGA Tour. So
I agree 100% with you. All right, we're going to wrap up Fairway to Heaven right there, right here on the DSM Media Network. Again, if you're watching on replay, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. If you're watching on other social media platforms, make sure you follow wherever you're at and share it out. And if you would like to do us a favor, head over to the YouTube page, hit that like, subscribe, put a comment in the comment section. It helps with the algorithm, it helps with growing the network. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. as I am every single day with Trending in the AM. Make sure you're following along. Football season's right around the corner. Lots of fantasy football content. We're going to be doing our live fantasy football draft live on the air on DSM Media. So you're not going to want to miss that. Anybody part of the DSM crew, some of our followers, if they want, they're going to be live drafting their teams right on the air here. So you're not going to want to miss a second of it. I'm super excited. I hope I get to this championship this week, the BMW championship. If not, I'll be watching, and we'll be back next week. Same time, Tuesdays, 9 p.m., right here with Fairway to Heaven. For my man Ricky here, thank you very much for joining me tonight on short notice. We'll be back next week, and everybody have a great night. And sorry, I gotta say it. It's John Rahm all the way, not Cam Young.
we'll see.